You feel worn out by all this convenience. It's a modern kind of burnout, not from hard work, but from too much comfort, too much stimulation. The ancient Stoics had an answer for this, a radical one. The Roman philosopher Seneca, he said to set aside some days, be content with the cheapest food, the scantiest fare. He wasn't telling people to be miserable. It was an exercise, a practice for mental freedom. That's voluntary hardship, choosing it on purpose, and it might be the real antidote to that feeling of being overwhelmed. To that exhaustion, the idea is to rebuild your resilience from the inside. We're going to see how choosing discomfort deliberately can change your relationship with stress. It can restore a sense of control. How on purpose can actually make it easier to live. Burnout now, it's not usually about not having enough. It's about having too much. We have more information than anyone before, more entertainment, more food, more ways to talk to people. But all that convenience, all that stimulation, it has a hidden cost. It drains your mental energy. Every notification is a small decision you have to make. Every menu with endless options means you have to choose. Every news feed you see asks for an emotional reaction from you. This isn't the tiredness from hard work, it's a deeper fatigue. It comes from an environment that never makes you endure anything, only consume. We get overwhelmed not by too little, but by too much. And that creates a loss of agency. You feel like you're being carried by a current of content and demands instead of steering your own ship. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said peace comes from understanding what you can control and what you can't. In his private notes, he told himself to focus only on his own judgments and actions. The chaos outside, other people's opinions, the flow of events, those weren't his to control. Modern life blurs that line. With infinite streams of input, everything feels urgent. Everything feels like it's within your sphere. It floods you with things you can't actually control. That's where burnout grows. It shows up as decision paralysis. Even picking a show feels like a chore because there are too many options. Or as a low-grade anxiety from the news, a feeling you have to stay informed about everything all the time. The tools meant to make life easier end up cluttering your mind. So think about your own routine. Where does having too much choice actually add stress? Is it the half-hour scrolling through streaming services instead of just watching something? Is it the need to check email constantly, making work feel never-ending? It's not about the things themselves, it's about our relationship to them. When everything is available, nothing feels satisfying. When you can avoid every discomfort, you lose the ability to handle the ones you can't avoid. Stoic practice starts by seeing that surplus for what it is. It's a weight, and the first step toward freedom is learning to voluntarily set some of it down. The key to feeling stronger might not be adding more comfort. It might be taking some away on purpose. That's voluntary hardship. The Stoics called it ascesis. It's not self-punishment, it's training, like a vaccine for the soul. You give yourself a small dose of difficulty now, so you're inoculated against future misfortune. You go without something you enjoy voluntarily, and you prove to yourself that your well-being doesn't depend on it. It reduces that anxious attachment to the possessions, the status, the comforts we think we need, and in that space, a deeper appreciation for what you already have can grow. Epictetus put it plainly. He said to occasionally go without pleasures, not because they're bad, but to remember you can live without them. For training, he said. Take a cold bath sometimes, eat plain food, wear a rough cloak. Do it to learn something, that it's not the thing you lack that causes distress. It's your judgment about lacking it. That's the crucial difference from harsh asceticism. This Stoic practice is temporary. It's intentional. It's not about rejecting good things forever. or believing suffering itself is virtuous. It's about visiting a place of simplicity so you're not a prisoner to complexity. Seneca would set aside days to live on cheap bread and water, to sleep on a hard bed. He was one of the richest men in Rome, and he practiced needing very little. Cato the Younger was known for simple clothing. Indifference to luxury, even in high office. They weren't proving their poverty, they were proving their freedom. Their peace of mind wasn't held hostage by their circumstances. So consider your own life. What's one small, non-essential comfort you rely on every day? Maybe it's that second cup of coffee from the cafe, the constant background stream of music or a podcast, the habit of checking your phone first thing in the morning. The practice begins by simply noticing that reliance, because the real training starts not in the grand gesture. It starts in the quiet, conscious choice to sometimes do without. The Stoics thought of life as a gymnasium, and voluntary hardship was their workout. It's like building physical strength. You don't start with the heaviest weight that would cause injury. You start with something manageable, something that challenges you but doesn't break you. You stress the muscle deliberately, and through that process it adapts, it grows stronger. This practice works on the same principle but for your mind. For your character, your resilience, your patience, your ability to endure frustration. These are like muscles. If they never face resistance, they stay weak. So when a real crisis comes, a major life challenge you didn't choose, you have no strength to draw on, you panic, you feel overwhelmed. Voluntary hardship is resistance training for your inner self. It's choosing a manageable weight for your psyche to lift. The philosopher Musonius Rufus was clear on this. He taught that hard work was necessary to train the body and the soul together. He wasn't promoting exhaustion for its own sake. He was describing a unified system. Just as physical training prepares the body for labor, this mental training through chosen difficulty prepares the soul. For life's inevitable hardships, the goal is fitness, not fatigue. We see this principle everywhere now, just by different names. Take exposure therapy for a fear of heights. They don't start at the edge of a skyscraper. They begin with a small step ladder. They voluntarily face a scaled-down version of the stress in a safe context. To build tolerance, an athlete doesn't train only in perfect conditions. They might run in the rain, practice when they're tired, to ensure they can perform when it matters, regardless of circumstances. That's the Stoic gymnasium in action. You are the athlete, life is your event. So what does a modern mental workout look like? It could be choosing to walk instead of drive for a short errand. Embracing the minor inconvenience to build patience. It could be turning off all screens for an evening, training your focus to exist without constant stimulation. It could be having a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, strengthening your courage muscle. The form doesn't matter as much as the intent. You select a stressor. You engage with it mindfully. You observe your own capacity. So reflect on this for a moment. What is one mental muscle, patience, perseverance, contentment, that you feel could be stronger? And then what minor voluntary hardship might serve as the perfect weight to train it? That answer is your personal training regimen. Comfort becomes your normal. Then it becomes your minimum. That's the trap. You get heated seats, and then a cold morning feels like a slight. Your phone gives constant entertainment, and then quiet feels like boredom. Psychologists have a name for it, the hedonic treadmill. You chase something, you get it, you adapt. Then you need the next thing to feel that same satisfaction. Happiness is always one upgrade away. Voluntary hardship steps off that treadmill. It's not about denying yourself forever. It's about proving your baseline for contentment can be reset. Moved from external conditions to something internal, something you carry. The Stoics called that virtue, living with wisdom, courage, justice, self-control. When your peace depends on that, and not your circumstances, you become unshakable. Seneca wrote about this. He was in exile, writing to his mother Helvia. He described true richness not in possessions, but in a mind content with itself. He said the person who learns to be happy with little possesses an inexhaustible treasure. That wasn't just poetic comfort, it was a psychological reality. By voluntarily experiencing less, you expand your capacity for satisfaction. You stretch the lower limit of what you need to be okay. And everything above that line starts to feel like abundance. Think of a power outage. At first, it's frustrating. No lights, no internet, food might spoil. But after a few hours, something shifts. You light candles, you talk, you might play a simple game. A strange, quiet satisfaction emerges from that simplicity. Or a camping trip, you leave the soft bed, the kitchen, you sleep on the ground, cook over a fire. The memory that stays often isn't the discomfort. It's the connection, the vivid clarity of the stars. These moments work because they forcibly recalibrate your baseline. They show you can not only survive, but find genuine joy with far less than you thought you needed. The minor hardship becomes the teacher, so reflect. Can you remember a time you lost a convenience? Your phone broke, the internet was down. After the initial stress faded, did you notice anything? A longer attention span, maybe, a more engaged conversation, a moment of unexpected quiet in your own mind. That feeling is the goal. It's the proof your normal can be recalibrated. That you can choose deliberately to find the richness Seneca described, not by adding more to your life, but by skillfully appreciating what is already there. Resilience is about bouncing back, but Stoic practice aims for something beyond that. It aims for antifragility. Think of a clay pot. You drop it, it shatters. That's fragile. A plastic cup, you drop it, it might survive. It bounces, that's resilient. But what if something actually got better from being dropped? That seems impossible, but it's real. It's called antifragility. It's a property of systems that don't just withstand disorder, they need it, they thrive on it. They get stronger from the stress. Your bones are like that. When you put weight on them, walking or lifting, tiny microfractures form, and the body repairs them. Makes the bone denser, stronger than it was before. The stressor literally builds you up. So Stoicism, through voluntary hardship, is a manual for building an antifragile mind. It trains you to not just endure life's shocks, but to metabolize them, to turn them into wisdom, to let the chaos become your curriculum. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He wasn't just putting a positive spin on things, he was describing a mechanism. An obstacle isn't a dead end, it's raw material, it's the friction that sharpens your blade, it's the art of turning obstacles into fuel. Resilience says, "I will survive this storm." Antifragility says, "I will learn to sail better because of it." When you take a cold shower voluntarily, you're not just building a tolerance to cold. You're practicing the mental maneuver. You're facing an unpleasant sensation and discovering your capacity to be okay within it. You're teaching your nervous system that discomfort is information, not an emergency. That minor, chosen stressor rewires your relationship to all the future, unchosen ones. Consider your immune system. It doesn't develop in a sterile bubble. It needs exposure, germs in small, manageable amounts so it can learn, adapt, grow stronger. A life of total comfort, avoiding all germs, leaves it weak. Vulnerable, your psychological immune system works the same way. By avoiding all discomfort, all frustration, all boredom, you leave it untrained. So when a real emotional challenge hits, it has no defenses. It collapses. Voluntary hardship is that controlled exposure. It's the psychological vaccine. It's the weight that strengthens the bone of your character. So look back at a recent minor setback, a project that got delayed, a plan that fell through, a difficult conversation. In the moment, it was just an annoyance. But with a little distance, can you see how it made you slightly wiser? Did it force you to be more creative? Did it reveal a hidden assumption you had? Did it teach you something about your own patience? That small gain is antifragility in action. The disorder didn't just pass through you, it left you a little more capable than you were before. The Stoic goal is to make that process intentional, to not wait for life to randomly drop challenges on you, but to seek out the right kinds of friction yourself. To become a system that doesn't fear chaos but knows how to use it. The Stoics would practice poverty. They'd do it to conquer the fear of it. That was their most direct form of voluntary hardship. Not because poverty itself was good, but because the anxiety of losing what you have, that's a much heavier burden. By choosing to live simply, even for a short time, you disarm that fear. You prove it to yourself through experience that your core well-being is still there. It's an experiment in freedom. Epictetus understood this. He was born into servitude. He taught that freedom is secured not by fulfilling your desires, but by eliminating them. He wasn't talking about total deprivation. He meant the freedom that comes when your happiness isn't chained to external conditions. When you don't need something to be happy, you're finally free from the worry of losing it. The practice makes that theory real. For a day or a weekend, you consciously simplify. You might eat only plain, inexpensive food, wear your oldest, most comfortable clothes, not something chosen for appearance. Turn off the heating and put on a sweater. The goal isn't to suffer, it's to observe, to notice the stories your mind tells you, that you need the gourmet coffee to start your day right, that you need the new outfit to feel confident, that you need the constant digital updates to feel connected. By stepping into a simpler version of your life, you test those stories, and often you find they're not true. Your confidence, your peace, your capacity for joy, they were there all along, just waiting to be uncovered when the noise of consumption died down. So a modern version of this. One application is a day of digital poverty. For 24 hours, you step away from social media, news feeds, non-essential messaging. You reclaim the attention those platforms consume. You might feel a pull, an itch to check, but in that space you often find a quieter, more present mind. Another is a weekend spending fast. You make no purchases beyond absolute essentials like groceries. You cook at home, you entertain yourself with what you already own, a book, a walk, a conversation. You break the reflex of reaching for your wallet to solve boredom or seek a small thrill. These exercises aren't about declaring technology or commerce evil. They're about declaring your independence from them. They're about remembering that you are the source of your own contentment. So here's a challenge. Plan one 24-hour period of intentional simplicity. Pick one area of consumption, digital, financial, culinary, and consciously step back. Observe what arises, the initial restlessness, the surprising pockets of peace. Notice what you discover about your own capacity when you're not being defined by what you have or what you consume. That discovery is the first step toward a deeper, more resilient kind of wealth. A lot of our mental energy goes to managing wants, not needs, but wants. It's a constant negotiation and it's tiring. You see an ad for something new. You feel a little hungry soon after eating. You get bored and pick up your phone. That's desire, always moving. It creates a kind of background turbulence and it uses up fuel. Stoicism has a response to this. It's called voluntary hardship. The point isn't to get rid of desire. Desire is human. The point is to create a space, a pause between the wanting and the doing. In that pause, you find your sovereignty again. Desire isn't the enemy, being enslaved by it is. When every impulse for comfort or novelty demands an immediate answer, you're not in charge anymore. You're just reacting, and a life of reaction leads to burnout. It feels like being pulled by invisible strings. Seneca wrote about this. He said limiting our desires brings peace to the mind. Contentment doesn't come from having, he argued. It comes from not wanting. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. The anxiety of missing out, the craving for the next thing, these are mental creations. They exhaust us long before any real deprivation happens. So by voluntarily stepping into a small version of that deprivation, we confront the imagination with reality. And often the reality is much more manageable than the fear. This practice becomes a training in discernment. It helps you separate a true need from a passing want. Take hunger before your usual meal time. That sensation is a want for immediate relief. The need is for nourishment, but that can wait. If you choose to sit with that minor discomfort for 30 minutes, you do something. You observe the desire as a phenomenon. You notice the stories it tells you that you'll be distracted, that you need the energy now, and you find you can watch those stories rise and fall without obeying them. You build the muscle of pause. Intermittent fasting is a modern example. Beyond the physical benefits, at its core, it's a structured practice in mastering desire. It's a voluntary agreement to experience the discomfort of hunger for a set period. The goal isn't just metabolic, it's psychological. It's the repeated lesson that the wanting does not have to dictate the doing. Each time you navigate that window, you strengthen your capacity to author your actions, not be written by your impulses. The application is everywhere. Seeing something you want online and imposing a 24-hour rule before buying it, hearing a critical comment and choosing to sit with the sting for an hour before replying, feeling the urge to check your phone and letting your hands stay empty for 5 minutes. In each case, you're not saying no to the thing forever. You're saying yes to your own ability to choose. You're building what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but a state of clear judgment undisturbed by overwhelming passions. So here's a small experiment. Identify one recurring, non-essential desire that tugs at you during the day. Maybe it's a mid-afternoon craving for a snack, the reflex to check social media when a task gets hard, the impulse to buy a small luxury after a difficult week. Your practice is to simply delay it, not deny it permanently, but consciously postpone the gratification for 1 hour. Use that hour to observe what happens in your mind. Notice the energy that was spent managing that want is now freed. It might feel uncomfortable, but in that discomfort is a quiet kind of power, the power to decide rather than just react. That first voluntary hardship in the morning, it's a vote for self-mastery, a small declaration. You're in command of your actions, not your impulses. This idea has ancient roots. Think of a cold shower or waking up 30 minutes early. On the surface, it's just an uncomfortable choice, but it's a training ground. By stepping into a minor difficulty first thing, you accomplish something crucial before the world makes its first demand. You create a win. You prove your willpower is operational. It sets a tone of proactive agency. It ripples through the entire day. Instead of starting by reacting to an alarm, scrolling through notifications, being pulled into other people's agendas, you begin by asserting your own. You begin with an act of discipline you chose. Marcus Aurelius understood this morning preparation. In his private writings, he'd remind himself at dawn what he was likely to face. He'd say, "You will meet with meddling, ingratitude, arrogance." He didn't say it to dread the day. He said it to fortify his purpose. He was preparing his mind. Not to be a passive recipient, but an active participant with a clear moral compass. By anticipating difficulty, he was choosing his response in advance. A morning ritual of voluntary hardship works the same way. It's a physical and mental rehearsal for the rest of the day's challenges. When you choose the cold water, you're practicing choosing courage over comfort. When you get up early to exercise, you're practicing choosing long-term well-being over short-term ease. That first decision builds a tiny reservoir of earned confidence. It reinforces the belief that you can do hard things. So when a stressful email arrives or a project feels overwhelming, you have a recent memory, a tangible memory of overcoming a difficulty you imposed on yourself. You've already been the author of your own challenge, so the challenges authored by the world feel less like threats and more like tasks. Practical applications are everywhere. The cold shower is a classic. It's immediate and undeniable. The shock of the water forces presence. It's a full sensory reset. It says, I am here and I am choosing this. A morning workout serves a similar function. It's a structured hardship. It builds physical energy and mental clarity. Even making your bed is a tiny, complete act of order. A small task finished, a corner of your world brought under control before you step into the chaos. The specific ritual matters less than the intent. It must be something you consciously choose. That requires a little effort that you do consistently. The consistency is key. It's the daily vote that adds up to an election victory for your own character. So a reflective prompt. What is one small, challenging morning ritual you could adopt? It doesn't need to be extreme. It could be 5 minutes of quiet before you look at your phone. Drinking a full glass of water before coffee. Writing down 3 things you're tackling today. Choose one thing that feels like a gentle stretch for your willpower. That first act of agency, taken while the world is still quiet, it can become the foundation for a day lived with purpose, not just reaction. The constant now of modern life might be eroding your capacity for deep satisfaction. Every notification gives you a tiny hit of now. Every streaming service has a whole season ready to watch now. Every online store promises delivery by tomorrow. This instant access trains your brain to expect immediate results, immediate answers, immediate relief. And when that expectation meets the real world, where meaningful things take time, you feel a friction. An anxiety, a low-grade frustration that saps your energy. This is a core engine of modern burnout. It's not the work itself. It's the mismatch between the instant digital world and the gradual human one. Our tolerance for waiting, for process, for uncertainty has been worn dangerously thin. The Stoic antidote to this is voluntary delay. It's the conscious practice of inserting a pause between an impulse and its fulfillment. You rebuild the mental muscle of patience not by waiting passively, but by choosing to wait on purpose. Epictetus gave clear guidance here. He said, if you do not wish to be prone to anger, do not feed the habit. He was talking about the first impulse, that flash of desire, that urge to react. Do not feed it. Give it no immediate action. This isn't about suppression. It's about creating a space, a buffer zone between stimulus and response. In that space, you reclaim your freedom. You stop being a slave to the ping of a notification or the lure of a buy now button. You move from reaction to considered action. The anxiety of needing an immediate result begins to dissolve because you've proven to yourself repeatedly that you can withstand the tension of not having it yet. That tension is where judgment improves, where impulse matures into choice. Think of it as building a response buffer. For non-urgent messages, you might decide not to check your email for the first hour of your workday. Or you might set a rule to wait at least 30 minutes before replying to anything that isn't time-sensitive. That gap breaks the cycle of instant reactivity. It gives your better judgment, not your startled lizard brain, time to craft a response. The world does not end. The conversation continues, often with more clarity and less heat. Apply this to consumption. Online shopping is a perfect training ground. The next time you see something you want, something non-essential, add it to a wish list or save it for later. Then impose a 24-hour rule. Wait a full day. In that space, something remarkable often happens. The urgent desire to possess it fades. You might realize you don't actually need it. Or you might still want it, but now it's a considered choice, not a compulsive click. You've exercised sovereignty over your own desires. This practice extends to information hunger. The urge to immediately look up an answer, to solve a mystery in a conversation by reaching for your phone. Try letting the question hang in the air. Embrace the not knowing for a little while. See if the conversation takes a more interesting turn. See if your own mind works a little harder to reason it out. You're training your brain to value the process of discovery over the instant download of a fact. So here is a reflective prompt and a simple challenge. What is one form of instant gratification that subtly rules your day? Is it the reflex to check news or social media the moment you feel a lull? Is it the need to immediately answer every text? Is it the online purchase for a small treat to brighten your mood? Choose just one. This week, commit to a voluntary delay. Consciously postpone that gratification by 24 hours. Observe what happens in that space. Notice the initial pull, the stories your mind tells you about why you need it now. And then notice the quiet strength that grows when you realize you are not ruled by the clock of your own impulses. That small, chosen pause might be the very space where your patience and your peace begin to grow back. The most common hardship now is just noise, too much of it. And the practice is choosing silence instead. Information overload isn't something that just happens to you, it actively drains you. Every headline, every update, every highlight from someone else's day, it asks for a little piece of your attention. A little piece of your energy, and it's not just being busy, it's a constant low-grade tax on your mind. Because it feels normal, because everyone's doing it, we don't really stop to ask what it costs. But this noise is a modern hardship, one that's imposed by the same tools we built to connect us. The Stoic move is to turn that imposed hardship into a chosen one. To step away voluntarily, that's the digital fast or an information diet. It's not about rejecting technology, it's about taking back your own mental space. By choosing deprivation in this one overwhelming area, you make room for stillness, real stillness. Seneca wrote about this, about the need to retreat. He said, retreat into yourself, especially when you're disgusted with your situation. He said the person who is everywhere is nowhere, and for a troubled mind, he prescribed solitude. Not loneliness, but a fertile quiet, where you can actually hear your own thoughts again. In that quiet, the noise of comparison starts to fade. The anxiety of needing to be constantly informed, it gets smaller. You're left with just the raw material of your own experience, and from that, a clearer sense of yourself can actually emerge. One practical way is a digital Sabbath. One day a week, or even a few hours each night, where you consciously disconnect from the streams. No social media scrolling, no news sites, no podcasts filling the air. You might silence notifications or leave your phone in another room. The goal isn't to be unproductive, it's to be productive in a different way, to give your mind space to wander. To rest, to process without new input. You might find, without that constant influx of other people's opinions and achievements, your own inner voice gets stronger. Less critical, more sure. The initial resistance is usually a fear of missing out or a worry about being uninformed. But here's a question. What is that fear really protecting? Is it about being left out of a conversation? Or is it a deeper discomfort with being alone with your own thoughts? And what might you gain in that silence? Maybe the return of a longer attention span, the ability to read a book again without checking your phone, or rediscovering a quiet joy in an uninterrupted conversation. Or a simple walk. The digital fast is a voluntary hardship, and it pays a direct dividend in mental clarity. It's the practice of finding, in the deprivation of noise, the profound richness of your own undisturbed mind. Shared comfort makes acquaintances. You connect over a nice meal, a funny show, but shared hardship, that's different. When you struggle together, face a manageable challenge side by side, it creates a different kind of glue. A deeper camaraderie. It's an antidote to isolation, that feeling of being alone in your stress, even around people. Voluntary hardship, done with others, turns a personal exercise into a social one. It builds trust through action, not conversation. You see someone's character when they're tired, when plans fall apart, and they see yours. In that mutual witnessing, a unique respect is born. It meets a deep, ancient need for connection, something superficial chats or digital interactions can't touch. the Stoics emphasized community and duty. They saw humans as social beings meant to contribute to the common good. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of his duty to fellow citizens. Epictetus taught we're all part of a greater whole. Choosing a hardship for a common purpose aligns with that. You strengthen the social fabric, not just your own resilience. You're practicing duty through shared effort. The unity after a team finishes a difficult project or a group completes a long hike, it's not just relief. It's tangible proof of interdependence. It's the quiet knowledge you were part of something bigger than your individual comfort. In practice, this could be joining a recreational sports team. The shared challenge is the game, the training, the commitment. It's not about winning every time, but showing up together. It could be volunteering for a community clean up on a cold morning or helping build a house. The physical work in less than ideal conditions creates an immediate shared purpose. Even a group fitness challenge where you check in on progress and encourage each other through tough days builds that bond. The activity is almost secondary to the mutual pact to endure and encourage. Think of a difficult group project late into the night. The frustration was real, but so was the laughter. The lasting memory isn't the stress of the work, but the solidarity with your teammates. That's the alchemy of shared hardship. It takes individual effort and turns it into collective strength. So a simple prompt: who's one person you could invite into a manageable, shared challenge? It doesn't need to be monumental. A weekly walk together, rain or shine. A beginner's pottery class where you'll both be awkward and learning. Cooking a complicated new recipe together without ordering takeout as a backup. Extend the invitation. Frame it as an adventure, not an ordeal. A chance to build something more meaningful than just a pleasant evening. In that shared, chosen difficulty, you might find a deeper connection. A reminder that we're not meant to face our challenges or build our resilience alone. The Stoics had this practice. They'd tell you to imagine losing what you love. To love it more, it sounds like a paradox, it sounds like torture, but they called it negative visualization, premeditatio malorum. It's a kind of cognitive workout. A voluntary hardship, but just in your mind. You don't actually lose anything, you just visit the possibility, and by visiting it, you take away its power to ambush you. Here's how it worked. You'd set aside a moment when you're calm. You'd quietly think about losing something you value, your health, a relationship, your home. Your work, you don't dwell on the graphic details, you don't wallow, you just acknowledge the reality that nothing is permanent, that this person, this comfort, this ability, it's a gift for now. It's not a guaranteed possession forever. This isn't pessimism, it's a vaccination. You expose your mind to a controlled dose of the idea of loss. You build antibodies against the paralyzing shock of real misfortune, and you accomplish something else. You strip away the taking for granted. When you imagine life without this thing, its presence right now starts to shine. With a new intensity, Seneca captured it. He wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." On wealth, he argued that rehearsing poverty in your mind is what makes you truly rich. Because the person who has already faced, in thought, the loss of their possessions, they're no longer a hostage to the fear of losing them. Their appreciation is active. It's chosen, not assumed. We can try a brief exercise. Think of one key convenience in your daily life. Maybe your car, your smartphone, the reliable electricity in your home. For just a moment, imagine a day without it, not a catastrophe, just a temporary absence. Your car is in the shop, your phone battery is dead for the day. The power is out for a few hours. Picture the minor adjustments, the slight inconveniences. Hold that image calmly for a few seconds. Now let it go. Return to the present. Notice the immediate feeling toward that object or system. Does it feel a little less like a background entitlement, a little more like a functional gift? That subtle shift is the point. The practice prevents a specific emotional burnout. the burnout of taking your good fortune for granted until it's gone, and then being devastated. By regularly visiting the idea of loss, you keep your gratitude muscle toned. You inoculate yourself against the entitlement that quietly erodes joy. So here's a simple challenge. Sometime today, set a timer for 60 seconds. Choose one thing you genuinely value: your eyesight, a close friendship, your ability to walk in a park. For that 1 minute, gently contemplate what your daily experience would be like without it. Then let the thought pass. And immediately notice your feeling toward that person or ability. Does it feel more precious, more immediate? That heightened awareness isn't fear. It's the deep, resilient appreciation that comes from knowing the fragility of a thing and loving it all the more fiercely while it is yours. The Stoics didn't see the body as something to pamper. They saw it as a partner, a vehicle for the soul, the instrument you use to express virtue in the world, and like any instrument, it needed tuning, conditioning. The goal wasn't physical perfection, it was discipline. When you put the body through voluntary strain, you aren't punishing it, you're proving a point to your own mind. You're showing that commands from your rational center can override the immediate protests, the screaming from sensation and fatigue. That builds a specific confidence. One that transfers directly to emotional battles, psychological battles. If you know you can tell your legs to keep moving up a steep trail, you also know, on a cellular level, that you can tell your anxiety to wait. That you can endure the discomfort of a difficult conversation. That you can sit with the frustration of a creative block without fleeing. The physical struggle becomes a rehearsal. For every other kind, the philosopher Musonius Rufus was emphatic on this connection. He taught that just as a lyre player needs to care for their lyre, a person must care for their body. But this care, he clarified, wasn't for luxury or beauty. It was for fitness, for usefulness. He argued it was impossible for the mind to be in good condition if the body was neglected. The training was unified. Epictetus, his student, echoed this. He said to exercise the body with vigor, not for showing off but to strengthen the mind. To build the endurance of the will. This is why modern practices resonate. Long-distance running, cold water immersion, rigorous hiking. On the surface, they're about fitness, adventure, but underneath, they're ancient Stoic exercises in disguise. When you're on mile 8 of a run and every muscle is pleading to stop, the real work begins. It's not in your legs anymore, it's in the quiet dialogue, the persistent dialogue between your desire to quit and your decision to continue. That dialogue is the gymnasium. Each step you take after wanting to stop is a rep for your integrity. A cold plunge is the same. The shock of the water isn't the point. The point is the 3 seconds of mental chaos that follow. And the conscious choice to breathe deeply, to stay present, to not scramble out immediately. You are practicing command. You are the general, and your panicked nervous system is the recruit. You are teaching it to obey a calm, deliberate order. So here's a reflective prompt and a practical challenge. What's one physical activity that sits just beyond the edge of your current comfort zone? It doesn't need to be extreme. It could be adding 5 more minutes to your daily walk, especially if the weather is unpleasant. It could be trying a yoga pose that requires balance and feels intimidating. It could be committing to a single set of push-ups each morning, even if you start on your knees. The activity itself is almost arbitrary. What matters is the conscious choice to engage with the mild strain, to feel your body complain, and to respond not with immediate surrender, but with gentle, firm persistence. Schedule that small act of physical command this week. Observe what happens not just in your muscles, but in your mind. The quiet confidence you earn from that minor victory may be the very tool you need for a much larger challenge waiting just around the corner. You can't really know warmth if you've never been cold on purpose. That contrast, that's where gratitude actually lives. Voluntary hardship is an art of subtraction. It's not about making yourself miserable. It's about making the space for a feeling to be felt again. We get numb to our pleasures. Constant exposure does that. The morning coffee, the comfortable bed, the favorite show, they just fade into the background. They become normal. They become invisible. And when your joys are invisible, life feels dull. Even when you have everything, that's a subtle kind of burnout. The antidote is to create a controlled absence. You remove a pleasure voluntarily. You reset your scales. You bring back the contrast so the ordinary can feel extraordinary again. The return isn't just a return, it's a rediscovery. This works because of a simple principle. Our perception is relative, not absolute. A sip of water is just a sip unless you've been thirsty, then it's a revelation. Epictetus talked about this. Happiness begins with a clear perception of the true nature of things. Habituation clouds that perception. We stop seeing the thing itself. We only see our expectation of it. A deliberate absence scrapes that cloud away. You meet the pleasure again for the first time. You see its true nature, not as a guaranteed entitlement, but as a transient gift, a beautiful one. This practice fights the burnout of taking things for granted. It turns life from a flat line of comfort into a landscape. Peaks and valleys, and you learn to find value in both. Take a modern mono diet. For 1 day a week, you eat only simple foods: oatmeal, vegetables, rice, beans. You forego the intense flavors, the sugars, the snacks. It's not deprivation for its own sake. It's resetting your palate. When you return to your usual meals, the flavors are brighter. Eating becomes more mindful. You appreciate the complexity you'd missed, or try a week without screens. No television, no streaming. The initial boredom is the point. That's the empty space. In that space, you might pick up that book on your shelf. You might have a long conversation. You might just watch the sunset with no distraction. The return to your show isn't a mindless default then. It's a conscious choice, and you watch it differently. You're present for it. So here's a question. What's one daily pleasure you take for granted? Your morning shower, your afternoon tea, the comfort of your sofa at the end of the day. What if you designed a voluntary absence from it? Not forever, just long enough to miss it, to feel its lack. Could you skip that shower one morning, to feel the appreciation for it the next day? Could you sit on the floor to read for an evening? To make the softness of your couch a luxury again, choose one small thing, remove it temporarily, and pay attention not to the lack but to the moment of return. In that moment, you find the contrast, the deep, resilient joy that comes not from having more, but from seeing clearly what you already have. The ancient Stoics wanted a luxury you can't buy. They wanted the certainty of their own capability. That's the real wealth they were after, a deep security, knowing you can adapt, knowing you can endure. Your peace of mind isn't in a bank account or a title. It's in the quiet confidence of your own resilience. The world sells luxury as opulence, as excess, as being served. The Stoic redefines it. The ultimate luxury becomes self-sufficiency. It's the opposite of fragile dependence. Think of the most lavish lifestyle. It's built on a web of external systems: chefs, drivers, assistants. If one thread snaps, the whole thing unravels into stress. That luxury is anxiety in disguise. It makes you a passenger, reliant on perfect conditions. Stoic luxury is different. It's robust. It's the internal state of being your own foundation. When you know from practice that you can cook a meal, navigate a city, spend an evening alone, you carry a different wealth. You carry freedom. The anxiety behind modern burnout often comes from that hidden dependence, the fear that if the Wi-Fi goes out, you're cut off. If the grocery delivery is late, you're stranded. If you lose your job title, you lose your identity. Voluntary hardship dismantles those fears. It proves to you, in small ways, that you're more capable than your comforts led you to believe. Marcus Aurelius pointed to this. He wrote that the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize that, and you find strength. He wasn't talking about positive thinking. He was describing the architecture of an inner citadel, a self-sufficient mental space where contentment lives, independent of what fortune provides or takes away. That inner space is the luxury. It's unassailable by market crashes, by social slights, by bad weather. So how do you build this now? You start by reframing basic competence as a high-value luxury. Cooking a simple meal from scratch with what you have, that's not a chore. It's an act of sovereignty. You're no longer at the mercy of restaurant hours or apps. You've reclaimed a skill, mending a torn seam, sewing on a button. It's a tiny declaration of independence from the throwaway economy, navigating somewhere new without immediately reaching for GPS. Using a map, asking for directions, paying attention to landmarks, it exercises your awareness and reduces the panic of a dead battery. These aren't just practical skills. They're psychological anchors. Each one is a brick in the wall of your inner citadel. Each one whispers in a moment of stress that you have options. That you're not helpless. It's the direct antidote to the learned helplessness that burnout breeds. So here's a reflective prompt, a gentle challenge. What's one basic skill of self-sufficiency that feels just outside your comfort zone? Maybe it's changing a flat tire or baking bread. Maybe it's understanding your home's circuit breaker or identifying a few edible plants on a walk. Choose one, commit to learning it or practicing it this month. Frame it not as a burden, but as an investment in your own inner luxury. In that competence, you won't just gain a skill. You'll gain a deeper, quieter security, the unshakable luxury of knowing you can handle more than you thought. Burnout can look like a short fuse, and choosing small hardships can actually lengthen that fuse. That low-grade irritation you feel at everyday things, a slow driver, a bad connection, a computer freezing, that's often just the signal of a system that's been overloaded. Overloaded by this idea that everything should be easy. We get this feeling that life should be smooth, our day should be free of obstacles, and when something gets in the way, it feels like a personal insult. It's like the world is breaking a promise it never actually made, a promise of no friction. Practicing discomfort changes that promise. By regularly letting small difficulties into your life, you're telling your nervous system something new. You're telling it that things don't have to go perfectly for you to be okay. You lower your expectation of constant smoothness. You get less attached to everything going right. And in that loosening, you find a gap, a little space between something annoying happening and your reaction to it. That space is where you have a choice. It's the difference between snapping and taking a breath, between firing off a message and waiting an hour. It saves a huge amount of energy you'd usually waste on sparks that just burn out. Seneca wrote about this in On Anger. He talked about preparing the mind to bear injuries lightly. He wasn't saying to just take abuse, he was talking about conditioning. Mental conditioning. If you've already practiced carrying the weight of chosen difficulty, then the unexpected frustrations of daily life feel lighter. They land on a mind that's already strong, already used to a little strain. You're not surprised by hardship because you've gotten familiar with it in smaller doses. Your tolerance for frustration grows, not by bottling it up, but by building a capacity for it. And the gym for this is everywhere. It's in the minor irritations you usually hate. The next time you're stuck in a slow line at the store, that's your gym. Instead of fuming, scrolling on your phone to escape, you can choose to practice. Just stand there, feel the impatience in your body, breathe. That's the voluntary hardship waiting without any mental distraction. You're lengthening the fuse. Or your video buffers, you can hit the desk or you can sit back for those few seconds, look away from the screen, stretch. You're using that glitch as a tool. A tool to practice patience, and each time you do this, you're not just getting through a moment, you're building a path in your brain. you're strengthening the link between frustration and a calm response. So when something bigger happens, a real betrayal, a serious conflict, you have a path to take. Not the knee-jerk path of outrage, but the quieter, more deliberate one. Think about a small thing that annoyed you this week: the slow coffee maker, someone cutting you off in traffic, a useless meeting. In the moment, your reaction probably felt automatic. But consider this: how would a mind that's used to practicing discomfort have reacted? Could there have been a pause, just a flash, where you saw the event for what it was? Just a thing that happened, not an attack on you or your peace. That tiny pause is where anger lets go and your energy is saved for what actually matters. Burnout grows when you're just taking things in. Creativity starts when you set a limit. When every option is open, the mind can freeze. It's like looking at 1,000 colors. That freedom can make it impossible to choose any. That's decision paralysis, and it feeds that drained feeling. You scroll, you watch, but you don't make. You're in receive mode. Over time, that leaves you empty because you're not expressing anything, you're just collecting. Shifting from consumer to creator changes the energy. And the key to that shift is often a limit you choose, a constraint. By giving yourself fewer resources, less time, simpler tools, you push your brain out of its passive habits. You make it solve a problem, to invent, to make do. That focused ingenuity is the opposite of burnout. It's deep engagement. The Stoics understood this. They called it making the best use of what's in your control. Epictetus taught that we shouldn't be passive recipients of our circumstances. We should be active artists with the material we're given. He said, don't seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for things to happen as they do. At first, that sounds like acceptance, but it's really a call to creativity. To take your exact situation with all its limits and craft your best response from it. That's creative constraint. You are the artist and your limits are the frame. History shows movements born from limitation. Haiku poetry, with its strict 17 syllables, forces meaning into a tiny space. Blues music emerged from hardship, channeling struggle into a powerful form. In innovation, there's jugaad, a Hindi word for a frugal, flexible approach to problem solving. It's about creating more with less, innovation born from necessity. This works on a personal scale every day. A writer setting a timer for 25 minutes to draft a page. A cook making a meal with only what's in the pantry. An artist using just 3 colors, finding nuance they'd never seen. In each case, the constraint isn't a barrier, it's a catalyst. It cuts through the noise of infinite choice and says, work with this. Now, and in that focused work, you forget to be tired. You forget to be overwhelmed. You're in the flow of making. So here's a simple challenge. Today, pick one small task and give it a deliberate constraint. Could you write a note using only 50 words? Make lunch with 5 ingredients. Doodle with only a pen, no eraser. The rule is arbitrary. The goal is to engage your problem-solving mind. To shift from passively taking in the world to actively shaping a small piece of it. Notice what that constraint unlocks. The ingenuity, the focus, the quiet satisfaction of creation. That feeling isn't just a break from burnout. It's the start of building a life that's authored, not just observed. There's an unshakable fortress inside you. It's waiting to be built, and the masonry for it is voluntary hardship. Every time you choose a manageable difficulty and you endure it, you're not just training for that moment. You're quarrying a stone, a solid memory of your own capability, and you place that stone into the walls of your inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius used this metaphor. He wrote that you can retreat into this citadel anytime to find immediate peace. He called it a quiet place, a fortress that can't be breached by the chaos outside. It's a sanctuary from that burnout, the feeling of being constantly assaulted by the world's demands. The more you practice this, the more stones you lay. And your inner refuge becomes stronger, higher, more secure. It's not a place to escape reality. It's a place of clarity within it, a space governed by your principles, not by external pressures. When a crisis hits, when stress mounts, you don't have to face it from a vulnerable, open field. You can retreat for a moment into this fortress you've built. You can look out from its walls and see the situation for what it is, not a personal annihilation, but a circumstance to be managed, and you're fortified by the knowledge held in every stone that you've handled difficulty before. You have endured, you have persisted. That's the ultimate purpose of the practice. You're not just getting through a cold shower or a long walk. You're actively constructing a psychological stronghold. One that no market crash, no critical comment, no failed plan can ever truly destroy. You likely already have stones in your wall without realizing it. Think of a past challenge you overcame, a time you studied for a difficult exam, the day you pushed through a tough workout you wanted to quit, the moment you held your tongue in an argument. Each of those is a stone, a proof of your resilience already in place. The practice of voluntary hardship is just the conscious, ongoing construction project. You are the architect, you choose which stones to add next. So here's a quiet moment of reflection. Look back over your life and identify one past difficulty you navigated. It doesn't need to be grand. It could be finishing a project on a tight deadline, caring for a loved one during an illness, or simply getting through a lonely period. That experience, that memory of your own strength, is a stone. It's already part of your inner citadel. Can you feel its solid weight? Can you recall the quiet confidence it gave you? That memory is a resource, a retreat you can visit whenever you need to remember who you are and what you're capable of building. Before you face what the world throws at you, the Stoics say you should first get good at choosing your own hardships. That's the discipline of assent. It's the basic skill of looking at every impression that hits you, every event, every demand, and deciding whether to take it at face value or to see it another way. Burnout happens when you feel bombarded by judgments you never agreed to. The email becomes an emergency. The traffic feels like a personal attack. The request seems like an impossible weight. You accept these impressions immediately without a second thought. Your energy gets taken from you. Voluntary hardship is where you train for this. By willingly accepting a difficulty you picked yourself, you practice the act of choosing your judgment. You stop being a passive victim of your situation. You become the active judge, giving this specific strain permission to enter your life. That changes how you relate to all difficulty. Epictetus had the core idea. He said it's not things that upset us, but our opinions about them. A rainy day is just weather. It's your opinion that it ruins your plans. That's what creates the frustration. A tough project is just a list of tasks. It's your opinion that it's too much. That's what creates the anxiety. Voluntary hardship puts you in the judge's seat on purpose. You look at cold water and you decide it's not a punishment but a challenge that wakes you up. You look at a plain meal and you decide it's not a lack but a kind of clarity. You're practicing how to assign meaning, so when an unplanned hardship shows up, a cancelled flight, a harsh comment, a sudden shift, you have a stronger habit to rely on. You've already rehearsed the move of stepping back and asking, what's my judgment here? Is this actually a disaster, or is it just a hassle I can handle? Think about a firefighter. They don't wait for a wildfire to learn how to deal with heat and chaos. They train with controlled burns. They walk into a managed, dangerous situation. To build their judgment, their calm, their step-by-step response. So when the real, unpredictable fire comes, they aren't controlled by panic. They're guided by the judgment they trained. Your chosen hardships are your controlled burns. The cold shower is training for judging physical shock. Passing on a treat is training for judging a want. A break from screens is training for judging the urge for distraction. Each one builds your ability to face the daily wildfires of stress without letting them burn you up. So here's a straightforward way to apply it. Today, pick one small, unavoidable annoyance you know is coming. the long line at the store, the boring paperwork. The noise from construction next door. Before you run into it, make a deliberate choice, reframe it in your mind, decide that for today, this isn't an imposition. It's your chosen practice in putting up with something. You are willingly accepting this friction as your training. You're the firefighter walking into the controlled burn. See how that changes your inner conversation. The event is the same, but your judgment of it is different. And in that difference, you take back a quiet control over your own energy and your own peace. You might assume choosing hardship would use up willpower, but the Stoics saw it differently. It actually saves it. There's this idea in psychology called decision fatigue. Every choice you make, even small ones, uses a little of a limited resource. That's your willpower. By the end of a day full of tiny decisions, you have less left for what really matters. The creative work, the hard conversation, standing by a principle. You're tired from navigating all those small choices. But if you practice voluntary hardship regularly, a hard choice stops being a choice. It becomes a habit, just part of your routine. You don't argue with yourself every morning about the cold shower or the plain breakfast. You just do it. And that automation saves a huge amount of energy. It frees up the mental space that used to go into that internal debate. The Stoic aim was to live by nature and reason. To simplify your judgments, when you decide once and for all that a certain simplicity is good, you remove a whole area of daily deliberation. You align your habits with that principle. Then you're not using willpower to fight yourself every day. You're just walking the path you already laid down with your values. Think about a minimalist wardrobe. Someone chooses to own just a few versatile pieces in matching colors. That first decision takes some thought, but after that, getting dressed isn't a drain anymore. There's no standing at a full closet feeling overwhelmed. The choice is simple, almost automatic. That's willpower being saved, redirected to the day's real work. Limiting your options, this voluntary hardship, it creates a kind of freedom. Freedom from that decision fatigue. Your own practice works the same way. Committing to a daily walk, no matter the weather, ends the daily debate. Should I go? It looks cloudy. I'm tired. That debate is gone. The decision was made when you set up the habit. Now you just follow through. The willpower you save is significant. It becomes fuel for deeper focus, for real creativity, for being your best self when it matters. So consider your own morning. What's one small decision that always starts a draining little debate in your mind? Is it hitting snooze, figuring out breakfast? Picking your first work task, could you design a simple habit to automate that choice? Maybe you decide breakfast is always oatmeal and fruit, or that your first 30 minutes at your desk are for your most important task, no email. Make that choice once firmly, then let it run on autopilot and notice the quiet space that opens up in your mind. That space is your willpower saved. Ready for something much more important. Burnout tells you to run from what's hard. Stoicism says to walk toward it, to meet it on your own terms. That's the real shift. We're taught to see any obstacle, any friction, as a sign something's wrong. A problem to fix right away so we can get back to smooth, easy operation. Our whole world is built on that now, on optimizing for comfort, but that optimization has a flaw. It makes us fragile. When you expect everything to be perfectly easy, the smallest inconvenience feels like a total system failure. A delayed train isn't just a delay, it's an affront. A critical comment isn't just feedback, it feels like a personal attack. The difficulty itself isn't really the main source of stress. It's the shock of running into it in a life that's designed to keep it out. The anxiety comes from the unfamiliarity, from believing this shouldn't be happening. Voluntary hardship rewrites that. By choosing to engage with manageable difficulties, you make friction a familiar part of your landscape. You stop seeing it as an alien invader in your peaceful kingdom. You start seeing it as a natural feature, a rock in the path you know how to step over, not a wall that stops you cold. The fear goes down because the unknown becomes known. The stress softens because you've built a history of getting through similar things. Difficulty changes from being a source of panic to a source of practice. Seneca put it well. He wrote that difficulties strengthen the mind like labor strengthens the body, and he said fire tests gold, adversity tests strong men. He wasn't glorifying suffering, he was pointing to a mechanism, our true capacity, our real character. It often stays hidden when things are easy. It's only when we're pressed, when we're challenged, that we find out what we're actually made of. Voluntary hardship is a way to run that discovery yourself. In a controlled, intentional lab, you get to see your own strength without waiting for a crisis to force it out. Think of a sailor who only ever sails on calm, glassy seas. They might feel competent, even skilled, but put them in their first real squall, and they'll be terrified. Every wave feels like a monster. The wind sounds like a scream. Their inexperience with hardship makes the hardship itself monstrous. Now take a sailor who trains in rough weather. Who goes out on purpose when the clouds gather, to learn how the boat handles, to feel the tiller tug against the waves. For them, the storm isn't a monster. It's a condition, a set of variables to manage. The wind isn't a scream, it's information. Their fear gets replaced by a focused engagement. The sea is the same sea. The storm is the same storm. The difference is the relationship. One sailor flees difficulty. The other has learned to engage with it skillfully. And in that engagement, they find a strength, a confidence that no calm day could ever give them. Your life is that sea. The storms are the inevitable frustrations, the setbacks, the pressures. Voluntary hardship is your training voyage. So here's something to consider. Identify one type of difficulty you usually avoid. It could be interpersonal, like giving difficult feedback. It could be practical, like tackling a home repair you don't feel skilled to handle. It could be internal, like sitting with a feeling of boredom without grabbing a distraction. Then think of one tiny, safe step toward engaging with it. Not solving it, just engaging. If it's the difficult conversation, your step might be writing down the 3 main points you want to say. If it's the home repair, your step might be watching one tutorial video. If it's the boredom, your step might be setting a timer for 5 minutes. To just sit and observe the feeling. This isn't about conquering the mountain today. It's about walking to the base of it on your own terms and touching the rock. In that small, deliberate act of walking toward what you usually flee, you start the most important change. You turn difficulty from a threat into a teacher. Each voluntary hardship is like putting something into a resilience bank. You're not just getting through something hard today. You're building up your future ability to stay calm. When you pick the cold shower, or you wait for something you want, or you work without letting yourself get distracted, that's a deposit. And that deposit grows over time in a way that's worth more than money. It pays you back later in calmness, in a quiet kind of confidence, in feeling less thrown when something truly difficult happens. This is the Stoic long view. It turns struggle from a cost into an investment. So when a real crisis comes, maybe a job problem or a personal loss or a time of not knowing what's next, you aren't starting with nothing. You have something saved up, a kind of psychological savings from all those small, deliberate choices to be strong. You meet the storm not with empty hands, but with the quiet knowledge of someone who's already chosen to go through smaller versions. Seneca wrote about this economy of the soul. He said we often suffer more in our imagination than in reality. The fear of a future problem can be worse than the problem itself. Voluntary hardship deals with that directly. By facing manageable difficulties in real life again and again, you make your own imagination less powerful. You show your mind through actual experience that you can handle more than you believe. Every deposit into your resilience account is a piece of evidence against future panic. It tells you during a real emergency, you've been here before, in a way, you've trained for this. The emotional reaction isn't as high, you bounce back faster. You act from a place of steadiness, not fear. Take a work project. You have a huge, complex report due in 3 months. The size of it feels overwhelming, like a future withdrawal that's too big for your account. But if you see your daily habits as deposits, the focused 90-minute sessions, starting even when you don't want to, looking at tough feedback without getting defensive, then the project shifts. It's not one terrifying withdrawal anymore. It's a series of smaller transactions paid for with the confidence you build each day. The hardship of the project is met by the resilience you've saved. You face it with more steadiness, less dread. So look ahead. What's a future challenge you see coming? It could be a hard conversation, a financial goal needing discipline, a creative project that feels big. Now ask, what's one small, voluntary hardship you could do today as an investment for that future moment? Maybe practicing clear communication when it doesn't matter much. Or a week of mindful spending to strengthen your resolve. Or time on a skill just outside your comfort zone. Find that one actionable deposit and make it. Not as a punishment, but as the smartest investment in your future self's peace. Stoic practice isn't about living in a cave. It's about living in the world with peace. That's the distinction. Voluntary hardship is a tool. It's a means to an end. The end is greater appreciation, deeper resilience, the ability to exercise virtue in life's complexity. Lose sight of that purpose and the practice twists. It can become a joyless competition with yourself or with others, a form of self-punishment disguised as discipline. A rigid asceticism that misses the entire point. The point is to live well, not to live miserably. The Stoics themselves warned against this. Musonius Rufus, the teacher of Epictetus, spoke about moderation in all things, including training. You wouldn't overtrain an athlete to the point of injury. You shouldn't push the soul to the point of breaking. The training is meant to build you up, not wear you down. It should leave you more capable of joy, not more detached from it. That's the balancing act. You use a small, chosen discomfort to unlock a much larger capacity for contentment. For engagement, if your practice feels like it's draining your joy, creating resentment, feeding a subtle ego where you pride yourself on how much you can endure, it's time to step back. The tool is being misapplied. Consider a practical contrast. A healthy practice might be choosing a simple meal once a week, to appreciate the flavors of your usual food more deeply. An unhealthy extreme would be a rigid, overly restrictive diet, one that causes social isolation, constant preoccupation with food. The first builds freedom. Freedom from being ruled by culinary desire. The second builds a new kind of prison, one made of rules and deprivation. Another example, a healthy practice is a daily cold shower. To build mental fortitude and presence, an unhealthy extreme is forcing yourself into dangerously cold water for too long, ignoring your body's signals. Turning a mindful exercise into a reckless test of endurance, the Stoic seeks wisdom and self-command, not bragging rights, not masochism. Even the structure of the practice should have flexibility. Missing a day of your chosen hardship is not a moral failure. It's a data point, a chance for gentle realignment, not for self-flagellation. The philosophy is meant to serve you, not the other way around. If life offers a genuine, lawful pleasure, a beautiful meal with loved ones, a comfortable rest after honest work, the enjoyment of art or nature, the Stoic embraces it with gratitude. They do not reject it out of some misplaced sense of purity. To do that would be to confuse the training for the goal. The training in simplicity is so you can enjoy complexity without being enslaved by it. The training in endurance is so you can engage with life's richness without fear of its hardships. So here's an essential reflective prompt. Look at your own approach. Check your motivation. Is your chosen practice building a sense of freedom and inner strength? Does it leave you feeling more capable, more appreciative? Or is it subtly feeding a different kind of anxiety, a fear of being soft, a need to prove your toughness, a rigidity that leaves no room for life's spontaneous joys? The answer guides you back to the true purpose. This isn't about building a harder shell. It's about cultivating a more resilient, joyful, and free core. You don't need a mountain. The real practice happens in your ordinary day. It's not about grand gestures. It's the quiet training inside your normal routine. Integrating micro-hardships, these are small, sustainable choices. They build resilience without disrupting your life, daily deposits into your inner strength. The philosophy becomes practical not in some dramatic retreat, but in 100 small returns to intention. You can think of it in simple categories. Physical micro-hardships are about moving with a little more effort, taking the stairs, parking farther away, a set of push-ups before your shower. Dietary ones are about mindful consumption. Skipping an afternoon snack, having water instead, finishing your meal and waiting 20 minutes before you think about seconds. Digital practices reset your relationship with screens. Putting your phone on grayscale, turning off non-essential notifications for a block of time. Temporal hardships reclaim your attention, waking up 15 minutes early to sit in quiet. Or a 5-minute pause in the afternoon where you do absolutely nothing. Consumer habits train discernment, a 24-hour rule for any non-essential online purchase. Choosing to repair something instead of replacing it. The principle is consistency over intensity. Epictetus emphasized this. Character isn't formed in heroic moments, but by the small, daily practices we repeat. He said, if you would be a good reader, read. If a writer, write. To build self-command, practice it in the small things. A single cold shower is an event. Choosing the cooler water every morning is a discipline. A one-day fast is an experiment. Leaving the last few bites on your plate at each meal is a cultivated habit. The micro-hardship wins by its regularity, not its scale. It's the drip of water that, over time, wears away the stone of automatic comfort-seeking. So here's a simple menu. Pick just one. First, the 5-minute earlier alarm. When it sounds, get up immediately. Don't check your phone. Get out of bed and stretch or look out a window for those 5 minutes. Second, the stair commitment. For any journey of 3 floors or less, take the stairs. No debate. Third, the grayscale phone. Switch your display to black and white for the entire afternoon. Notice how it changes your urge to scroll. Fourth, the delayed reply. For any non-urgent message, wait at least 30 minutes before responding. Use that time to consider your words. Fifth, the mindful sip. For your next beverage, drink the first few sips with your full attention, as if tasting it for the first time. Your prompt is this. Look at that short list. Which one feels like a gentle stretch, not a tear? Which one whispers a quiet challenge? Select just one micro-hardship from it. Commit to practicing it for the next 3 days. Don't make a grand proclamation. Just do it and observe. Notice the slight resistance, the small voice of convenience that objects. And then notice the quieter, stronger voice that says, I choose this. In that tiny, repeated choice, you are not just getting through a day, you are architecting a mind. The hardship builds the muscle, but the reflection, that's what writes the strength into your system. You can go through something difficult, a hard practice, but if you don't stop to understand it, the lesson can just evaporate. It stays as an event, just a thing you did. The real change happens later in the quiet, when you look back and make sense of it. That's where journaling becomes the partner to the hardship. It's taking the raw effort and forging it into wisdom. The Stoics knew this. They didn't just endure, they reflected deeply. Marcus Aurelius is the proof. His private writings, the meditations, they were never for publication. They were his journal, his nightly review. In those pages he confronted his frustrations, his anger, the weariness of ruling an empire. He wrote to remind himself of his principles, to dissect his reactions, to coach his own character. That journal was his training ground. It's where he turned the chaos of leadership into a curriculum for his soul. So the mechanism is there, the voluntary hardship, facing a decision, bearing a burden. That's the first step, but the journaling is the second, crucial step. That's how you integrate it, move it from something that happened to you to something that shapes you. For us, it's the same process, just scaled down. After you finish a small, chosen hardship, a digital fast for an afternoon, a cold morning walk, the work isn't over. That's when you take 5 minutes. You sit with a notebook or a note on your phone, and you ask a simple question. What did I choose to do without today? And what did I learn? Writing forces clarity. It slows the mental replay down. You might start with the physical sensations. I felt the pull to check my phone, a restlessness in my hands. Then you notice the mental chatter. I thought I'd be bored, but I noticed the birds outside. I believed I needed the distraction, but its absence made space for a single, clear thought. And then you land on the insight. I survived the discomfort. More than that, I found a quiet focus I'd forgotten. My well-being wasn't held hostage by that device. That sentence, written in your own hand, is a stone added to your inner citadel. It's documented evidence. Over time, this journal becomes a map. You can look back and see a pattern. The early entries where a minor frustration felt overwhelming. And then, weeks later, your response to a larger challenge noted with more steadiness. The journal doesn't lie. It shows you, in your own words, that you're becoming stronger, more adaptable. The reflection solidifies the gain. So here's a prompt. Tonight before sleep, take 5 minutes. Write about one small discomfort you faced today, chosen or unexpected. Describe it briefly. Then write 2 or 3 lines about your response. Did you react with impatience or find a sliver of patience? Feel the urge to complain or just carry on? There's no judgment, only observation. This isn't about grading performance. It's about witnessing your own process, and in that act of witnessing, you complete the circuit. The hardship builds the muscle, and your reflection writes that strength into the story of who you are. Stoicism is personal. It's a philosophy you build for yourself, but it doesn't have to be something you do alone. You can share the journey. There's a real strength in bringing your practice into a conversation with someone you trust. When you talk about a hardship you've chosen, you do something. You normalize the effort. You see you're not the only one wrestling with the urge for comfort or the pull of distraction. That shared recognition, it's an antidote. It quiets that doubt that whispers this is too difficult or that you're doing it wrong. A community, even just one friend, gives you perspective. They can reflect your progress back to you when you can't see it, and they offer a gentle accountability. It feels like support, not pressure. This connects to a core Stoic idea. Sympatheia, it's the belief in the interconnectedness of all rational beings. We're part of a greater whole. We're meant to live in fellowship, to contribute to the common good. Our individual efforts at betterment, they're not just for us. They ripple out. They strengthen the social fabric. By sharing your journey, you honor that connection. You turn a private discipline into a shared exploration, an exploration of what it means to live well. Practically, what does this look like? It could be finding an accountability partner. You and a friend commit to a shared micro-hardship for a month, maybe a daily cold shower or a weekly digital Sabbath. You check in briefly, not to judge but to witness each other's experience. What was hard today? What surprised you? The simple act of reporting back to someone who understands the why, it deepens your own commitment. Another path is joining a Stoic group. A reading or practice group. Many meet online, discussing passages from Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus with others. It reveals layers of meaning you might have missed alone. Hearing how others apply ancient wisdom to modern jobs, relationships, anxieties, it makes the philosophy alive, vibrantly alive. It transforms theory into a lived, communal conversation. So here's a prompt to consider. Is there someone in your life, a partner, a family member, a colleague, someone you could share your interest in this practice with? It doesn't require a grand declaration. It could begin with a simple observation. You might say, I've been reading about this old idea, choosing small discomforts to build resilience. I'm trying it out. Would you be interested in hearing about it? Or even, would you like to try something small together? In that opening, you extend an invitation. Not just to a practice, to a deeper kind of connection, built on the shared pursuit of a quieter, stronger mind. The gym is practice. The real game happens when life throws something at you that you didn't choose. That's where voluntary hardship shows its value. You've spent time in that mental gym, lifting manageable weights of discomfort. So when an involuntary hardship comes, an illness, a setback, a loss, you're not starting from zero. You're not surprised by the strain. You have a toolkit, patience, perspective, a quiet inner strength, and you have that proven self-knowledge earned in those small, chosen battles that you can endure. That's the true test of the practice. It keeps a crisis from becoming a total burnout, because you meet it not as a helpless victim, but as someone who's already faced difficulty and knows their own strength. Epictetus put it well. He said, "A lamp, when it's shaken, shines even brighter. A soul tested by difficulty reveals its true character. The shaking isn't the end of the light. It's what makes the light visible. Your character, built through voluntary practice, is that light. When life shakes you, that's not when you break. It's when your resilience finally gets to shine." Think of a common stressor, a sudden job loss. For someone untrained, the shock can feel like a freefall. Panic sets in, identity feels shattered, every rejection feels personal. The mind spirals into worst-case scenarios. Burnout from the stress of the search just compounds the grief. Now picture someone with a background of voluntary practice. They've practiced living on less, so financial anxiety, while real, doesn't have the same paralyzing grip. They've practiced acceptance of things outside their control, so they can separate the event, the job loss, from their core worth. They've built the muscle of patience through daily micro-hardships, so the long, uncertain process of a job search feels less like torture and more like a difficult project to manage. They have that resourcefulness from practicing with constraints. They know how to make do, to be creative, to focus on the very next step. The hardship is still deeply challenging. It still hurts, but it doesn't destroy them. They have a foundation to stand on, built stone by stone in quieter times. This applies to smaller things, too. A major travel delay, a project falling through, a period of poor health. In each case, the person with a practiced mind has a different internal conversation. They might feel that initial flare of frustration, but it quickly meets a well-worn path. A path that says, "This is difficulty. I have met difficulty before. My task is not to wish it away, but to navigate it with the resources I have." They shift from "why is this happening to me" to "what can I do with this?" So take a moment, look back at a past involuntary hardship you faced, a difficult move, a period of grief, a professional disappointment. Now, with the perspective of this practice, ask yourself gently, how might a background of voluntary hardship have changed your experience? Not the event itself, but your inner landscape during it. Might you have found patience a little sooner? Accessed a deeper well of calm, seen resources or strength you overlooked in the moment? This isn't about regret. It's about understanding the practical shield this training builds. For all the curveballs still to come, what starts as just a cold shower can, over time, turn into a colder, clearer view of things, a more courageous way of seeing. That's the cumulative effect. The single act, that's just a seed, but the daily repetition, that quiet commitment, that's what lets it grow roots. And those roots, they slowly change the whole landscape of your mind. You stop being someone who just occasionally does a hard thing. you start becoming someone whose default setting is strength, gratitude, a clear-eyed way of engaging. The practice stops being an exercise you schedule. It becomes the lens you see everything through. That's the Stoic shift from practice to a way of life. The goal was never to collect difficult feats. It was to cultivate a soul so resilient, so aligned with nature and reason that hardship, the kind you choose and the kind you don't, loses its power to throw you off. Your center of gravity moves. It shifts from seeking external comfort to pursuing internal virtue. And in that new center, burnout, it finds very little to hold onto. The Stoics had this ideal figure, the sage. This wasn't meant to be some perfect, unattainable superhero. It was an aspirational model, a portrait of what a human life could look like, lived with consistent wisdom, courage, justice, self-control. The sage tranquility didn't come from a life without storms. It came from a mind so well-trained, so fortified by principle, that the storms raged outside the walls. Outside a profound inner peace, we are not sages. The Stoics were clear that perfection is rare, but the path toward it, the daily journey of aligning our actions with that ideal, that's where the transformation happens. Every time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, every time you meet a minor irritation with patience, not complaint, you're walking that path. You're sculpting your character, one deliberate choice at a time, closer to that model of resilient equanimity. You'll notice the changes in subtle ways. Powerful ways. The reflex to complain about a rainy day softens. It becomes just an acknowledgement of the weather. A professional setback stings, but the recovery is quicker. You spend less time in the why me spiral, more time assessing the new terrain. You find yourself pausing to actually taste your food, to feel the sun on your skin, to listen to a friend without mentally drafting your reply. These aren't grand philosophical declarations. They're the quiet fruits of a mind that's practiced contentment with what is. Your appreciation deepens because your dependence on perfect conditions has lessened. You engage with reality proactively, not because you're forced to, but because you've built the capacity to do it. Life's friction becomes less of a threat and more of a texture you know how to navigate. So let's project forward gently. Imagine your life 6 months from now. Not a fantasy of perfection, but a realistic vision of integration. You've woven small, consistent Stoic practices into the fabric of your weeks, a daily moment of reflection, a regular voluntary limitation, a conscious pause before reacting. What would be different? Maybe the morning's frustrations would roll off with a little more ease. Maybe you'd approach a big challenge not with dread but with a focused calm, seeing it as a series of manageable steps. You might find joy in spaces that used to feel like empty time. The cumulative effect isn't a sudden revolution. It's a quiet evolution from seeking comfort to building strength, from avoiding difficulty to engaging with life fully, courageously, on its own terms. Let's stop and ask the obvious question: why would someone make things harder on purpose? It can look like self-punishment, like you're just chasing pain. That's the first objection, but Stoics draw a line here. It's not about the pain, it's about freedom. The difference is in why you do it. A masochist wants the suffering. A Stoic wants a manageable test, a test to show your peace isn't controlled by your situation. Seneca put it well. He said, "A wise person can endure poverty, while a fool is just poor." The outside might look the same, but the inside is completely different. One is practice, the other is a trap of bitterness. Taking a cold shower isn't punishing yourself. It's a statement that a little physical discomfort doesn't get to decide your mood or your will. You decide. Then there's the second point. Life is already hard enough. Why add more? That makes sense. If you're dealing with sickness or money trouble or loss, the idea of looking for extra difficulty can seem wrong. The Stoic idea isn't to add weight. It's to change how you carry weight. The training is for the hardships you already have. Think of it this way. If you had to carry a heavy bag a mile, you wouldn't carry a second identical bag for practice. That would be cruel, but you might lift lighter weights at the gym to strengthen the muscles you'll use for that real walk. So when you pick up that heavy bag life gives you, it feels a bit lighter. Your shoulders are more ready. The voluntary hardship is the lighter weight. The real hardship is the heavy bag. The training doesn't ignore your struggle. It tries to give you stronger shoulders for it. That brings up the third objection, maybe the biggest one. Isn't this a privilege, to choose hardship when so many have no choice? That's an important question. The Stoic answer changes how you see privilege, not as something to feel guilty about, but as a responsibility. If you have safety and comfort, that's a gift. But that gift can become a cage if it makes you fragile and entitled. The Stoic use of that privilege is to turn it into strength, to use your safety as a lab, to build a resilience that doesn't depend on that safety. So if things change, you don't fall apart, and so you can be steady for others who are struggling. Your privilege isn't just having a soft life, it's having a secure place to deliberately toughen your mind, to become someone who can help carry other people's bags because you trained your strength first. Look at the difference in how people live. One person lives in constant low worry. They avoid any inconvenience, any hard talk, any small discomfort. Their world gets smaller and smaller. They retreat from anything that might cause a ripple. They're at the mercy of every little frustration because they've never practiced meeting one. Then look at the person who engages with voluntary hardship. They can enjoy a nice meal without becoming a slave to fine dining. They can handle a delayed flight without a meltdown. They can sit with sadness without needing to numb it right away. They move through the world with a kind of grace, a grace that comes from knowing they can handle both comfort and difficulty. Their resilience isn't a wall that keeps life out. It's a flexible strength that lets life in on their own terms. So here's an invitation. Pause for a moment with your own biggest objection to this. Which one hits home, that it seems pointless, that your life is hard enough already, that it feels ethically complicated? Don't argue with the objection yet. Just look at its root. What fear is it protecting? The fear of discomfort itself, a belief that struggle should always be avoided, a worry that you're not strong enough to even try. There's no judgment here. This is just the first honest step of the practice, to see your own resistance clearly, because understanding that resistance is often the key to moving through it. And finding the quieter strength waiting on the other side. It always comes back to that one quiet truth: you're stronger than your comforts have let you believe. Voluntary hardship isn't about celebrating suffering. It's about reclaiming your own agency. The world is built to make you feel overwhelmed, to make you feel behind. This practice hands you back the reins. It's that quiet, stubborn act of saying no to endless consumption, saying yes to the discipline of building your own inner foundation. We talked about resetting your baseline for contentment, so joy isn't always one upgrade away. We explored building antifragility, so life's shocks don't just leave you intact, they leave you wiser. We practiced mastering desire, creating that pause between an impulse and your action. Stone by stone, we fortified that inner citadel, a mental fortress of calm. No external storm can truly breach it. This is the practical antidote. It meets modern burnout not with another wellness trend, but with an ancient form of psychological training. It turns that feeling of powerlessness into a curriculum for strength. The philosopher Epictetus knew the weight of true limitation. He left us with a guiding light. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That's the ultimate goal of every cold shower declined, every desire delayed, every quiet moment of reflection. It's not freedom from hardship, it's freedom within it, the freedom of self-mastery. Your path forward doesn't begin with a grand gesture. It begins with a single, small choice. Start small, be ruthlessly consistent, and reflect. Take those few minutes to journal, to understand what each micro-hardship teaches you about your own capacity. Your progress won't be in dramatic leaps, it'll be in the subtle shifts, a slower fuse, a quicker recovery, a deeper appreciation for an ordinary moment. We'd like to hear about your journey. In the comments, share one micro-hardship you're choosing this week. It could be a daily walk without headphones, a commitment to a digital sunset each evening. Let's build a community of practice, sharing insights and encouragement as we each strengthen our inner citadels. If you found this path meaningful, consider subscribing for more practical Stoic wisdom to navigate modern life with clarity and resilience. Remember, the goal was never to make life harder. It was to make you stronger so you can live it more fully, more freely, starting today.